If you put your dreams into the service of the dreams of people more vulnerable than yourself, your own dreams begin to come true. It's a shamanic contract, if you like, with the universe, with God. As soon as you put your dreams into service in that way, the universe doesn't want you to burn out. All you have to do is articulate those dreams once you've made that decision to go into service. If you don't go into service in some way like this, you will be depressed. So what are your dreams, people? What are your dreams? Autism is not a problem to be fixed. Autism is a set of gifts and skills that sometimes the people who are born with it can have some other difficulties. They might be incontinent, they might be nonverbal, they might have sensory issues. And one can help with this stuff, but the essential autism often leads to some specific gifts. Memory, which is extraordinary, the ability to focus the intellect without thinking, oh, he's taller and better looking than me and makes more money. Oh, she's prettier than me and has a PhD. They don't bother with that stuff. And they have very quiet egos, so that when you're with them, you kind of get a break from that horrible little voice in your head that tells you you're a piece of poo all the time. And so it's incredibly healing. So just being with my son and the other kids that we work with is, of course, incredibly healing. But my son also has a particular take on the world, which, if you listen to him, he's kind of always right. He just is always right because he doesn't really have an ego. So I really let him, if he expresses any sort of discernment or judgment, I don't question it, I follow it. And he's basically trained me how to work with autistic people. After we did that rather crazy trip across Mongolia together, which was amazing and was this incredible adventure that we had together as a family. Because my son had become verbal in the saddle, he'd learned to read in the saddle, he'd learned math and numbers in the saddle, and we'd found all these fun techniques for doing this. And I thought, well, maybe it's other kids too. So I started running unofficial play dates for other families on the spectrum at the ranch where we live. And sure enough, we were getting a pretty universal response. And we realized that there was a pattern to it. It was when the horse was in a certain kind of rhythm that we got our best result. So I then became curious again. I was like, well, why? Why is this working? So I started reaching out to neuroscientists and saying, what's going on? And they looked at this hip rocking effect that was happening in these particular rhythms on the horse. It was when the horse was really moving in a very beautiful rhythm that it happened. And they said, what's going on is with that kind of hip rocking in the human body, it causes you to produce a large amount of oxytocin. Oxytocin is the happiness hormone. You'll need oxytocin, people, and serotonin. The other thing it is it's the communication hormone. So this thing that we have in our body, in our brain, to seek out the production of oxytocin, whether through sex, whether through dancing, whether through riding a horse, whether through sitting in a rocking chair, whether through anything that rocks our hips in this way, we always seek it out. Because when you mate, when you're producing all of this hip rocking, you might have a baby. If you have a baby, it takes 20 years for that junior sapiens sapiens to reach adulthood. There's going to be a lot of challenges along the way. If one parent leaves, particularly in the hunter-gatherer setting, the chances of survival for that infant go way down. So you need a communicative bond between the parents to make sure they try and stay together after they've made the baby, to see that baby through to the point where they can make babies. And we're good at it. So our species is very dominant. So this is what seemed to be going on. So he's being flooded with this communication hormone. In the saddle, he began to speak, and this indeed was what was happening with the other kids. So what we had stumbled into was a way of ending what's called the cell danger response in the brain. And with a lot of people on the spectrum, this is often exacerbated, made worse, by an oversensitive nervous system. So that constantly pressures the amygdala, and they get in a vicious cycle, particularly if they're in unempathetic environments like schools, like therapy offices. And when they're in therapy all the time with someone in front of them going, you're a problem, the way you are is no good, you need therapy, you need to change, being you is not good. You tell a child that every day of their life, you break the child, you break their spirit, and we're dealing with a lot of broken-spirited kids by the time they come to us. And then what happens is we provide happiness, joy, this type of movement that rocks the hips, they get flooded with oxytocin, and something else. Something called neurotrophic factor. When there's a effect, this big dose of oxytocin that comes in, euphoria, also causes neurotrophic effect. So things that you remember in times of great joy when you were moving, like at the party to end all parties, or the lovemaking where the world really did move. It's going on when you're in the saddle, it's going on when we're moving with the kids, when we're bouncing with them on trampolines, when we're chasing them around with water fights, when we've got them on our shoulders, we put them in wheelbarrows and have chariot races and wheel them around, and then we begin to talk about math and science while we do this. So now we work with kind of everybody. This method that we have called movement method. It's in schools now. It works really well with kids with ADD, who are so super smart. And everyone thinks ADD is a problem. It's just a sign that your child is smart. Like, don't give them drugs to make them less smart. That's just nuts. Work with the brain. And you show them how it works. Draw a diagram, show them a thing of the brain. They go, oh, so I've actually got some control over this. Interesting. And then the subconscious starts to go, ha ha ha, because we like to be in control. And every time we do something that works, we get a little dopamine hit. So our brain wants to go towards a functional dopamine hit rather than a dysfunctional, like drinking too much tequila, dopamine hit, because that makes us feel bad. This one makes us feel good, so our brain goes over there. That's why video games work so well. Rowan's amazing. Rowan is a bloke now. He's taller than me. He's got a job. He works on the ranch as well. You can totally have a conversation with him and say, oh, could you be an angel and just make me a quick cup of tea? And he'll be like, oh, I can't remember, Dad. You don't take it with sugar, right? And he would come in and have that conversation. And then at the same time, he would then say, oh, I need to stim out now. And he would then go away and he'd flap and he'd do his thing and talk for about 5 minutes obsessively about some aspect of the movie Smokey and the Bandit, for reasons best known to himself. And then he'd come back and he'd say, that thing you wanted me to do, which screwdriver was it that you wanted? So he totally has a foot in both worlds. And he retains as well this absolute pure sweetness which so many people on the spectrum have, this healing effect on other people. He just has to walk into the room and everybody feels better. And I know so many people on the spectrum who are like this because of this quiet ego. Because when they look at us, they don't reflect our mirror neurons. And lucky us to get to spend time with them. So who's the healer? Who's the therapist? Should I be paying my son €100 an hour to hang out with him so I get a little break from that horrible voice in my head that tells me I'm poo all the time? Absolutely I should. So I'm at his service forever.